Welcome to yet another edition of SASS Kuyafiwa chat room show, where we bring you all matters boxing, and we will be calling and actually interviewing guests, and celebrities in boxing, boxing personalities, VIPs, boxing followers at any given time. And it is an honor and a privilege at this point in this edition that we have the Gauteng Boxing Provincial Manager, Lehlohonolo Ramahole, in studio with us. Lehlohonolo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Sipho Kuyafiwa.
Thanks, my man. Kuyafiwa, indeed. This is SASS Kuyafiwa chat room. Lehlohonolo, it is an honor to have you in studio. You one of the people that have done remarkably well in the game of boxing. You started off as a boxer yourself. What led to the bite, the bug, that you get involved in boxing?
Some things we don't choose, Rasipo. And one thing for sure, I was born in a family of boxing, and that's where it all started, basically, being born of a father that was a boxer as well, coming from a family that had a former former welterweight champion, Mr. Baby Ramahole, who was my uncle. So, and apart from that, the one thing that actually made me love the sport was the fact that initially I had a bully in school. So when I went back home, every time I would complain that somebody took my lunchbox and all of that.
Yeah.
So I thought, no, let me give it a try, and I gave it a try. And what's very funny is when I started boxing, I was not trained by my father. I started at another gym, trained by Mr. Lindani Ngakeni. And that's where it all started. My father only found out when I boxed against his boxer in the Soweto Championship that I'm actually in boxing. So, and then from there I converted, went back to my dad, and that's where it started up until to this day. I've been loving boxing.
And what was your experience in amateur boxing?
Okay, where should I start? I became a regional champion, regional meaning Johannesburg. I became a provincial champion. I became a national champion, I think 3 times South African champion, and went to represent South Africa in the Zone 6 African Games, where I became a silver medalist. And then from there, I went to the World Championship. Initial World Championship, I lost to the former world champion Amir Khan, who was representing England.
Wow.
Then, so I've done my bit in the matches.
Wow. So you actually have some achievements in amateur boxing, and you well traveled. You traveled the world.
Yes, indeed, sir.
Okay. And then when do you turn professional? Because we know that you became a professional boxer.
I turned professional 2005. Seeing that I was good but unable to go represent my province in the national team, I decided why stay in the amateurs, you understand? And I turned pro. Then when we started as professionals, because I didn't even have to go for my license for sparring, I was a gold medalist. So I just took my record in to Mr. Lois Omja, who was then the CEO, and he took me in as a professional. The norm then was that if you are a gold medalist, you don't have to spar, even though it's not on the regulation. It was just the norm. So I took it there. Fortunate for me, when I got in, it was the introduction of what was called the baby champ. 157 boxer, the first baby champ ever. 157 boxer in the country. Only 7 could be champions. And it was round robin. Sometimes you would fight 2 fights a day, 3 fights. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Mashiko was my ring announcer.
We come
along, indeed. So that's where it all started. And out of the 157 boxers, like I said, only seven could be champions. and I was one amongst the 7.
Wow.
And I was the
Congratulations.
only one. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. Baby champion.
Yeah. Oh,
Baby champion.
indeed.
Yeah.
So I was the only one from a different province. All 6 were from Eastern Cape.
Wow.
So from there I got the nickname from Mr. Loyiso to say, you are a Xhosa Msuthu. That's it.
Yeah, I can recall one of your fights. I mean, you were fighting in Soweto. I was the ring announcer there, and you had quite a following. You know, I remember that fight because there was a lot of dancing. People were following you around. You were actually, you know, one of the boxers that people aspired to, and you had a huge following, and they loved watching your fighting.
Indeed, indeed. No, I must be quite honest that Soweto as a whole, and the councillors, let me be specific around Orlando, they would usually back me up in terms when I needed transport. I remember when I was about to leave the country, and they hired about 3 buses, filled it in, and they all accompanied me to the airport, you understand, when I was going for my first world championship. And it was then under Mr. I forgot, Junior Ramova. Mr. Junior Ramova was part of the SASS and all of that. So they would assist me. So now, every time I had a fight, the councillors would market the fight all around Orlando. And I would find a lot of fans. I would find a lot of people wanting to be part of boxing now, and you know, so I had a lot of supporters. And again, I've always believed that the manner that I was actually, when I say the manner, I was not one of the guys that you would find in wrong places, and I would be a very disciplined boxer, and that made a lot of people like me, and they would come and support me.
You know, that's well said. Now, as a provincial manager, as an experienced former boxer, you know, you've seen it, you've done it. What do you think should happen to boxing so that we can elevate the sport to, you know, towards you know, rivaling international status and competing with international boxing bodies and actually producing champions in the country? You know, what is your thinking? What should happen?
You know, one of the mission statement of Boxing South Africa is that we want to make boxing a #1 sporting code in the country and compete with it with the universal standards. So if we truly want to do that, it means we need to keep up with the times. And part of keeping up with the times, I can see we've already taken a step in terms of agreeing to be part of the celebrity boxing. That's also keeping up with time. I mean, Mayweather has done that overseas. That also appeals to your corporate world to say, no, we want to be part of that, where we can get sponsors. I mean, you look into boxing for the previous 10 years, if I'm not mistaken, we have not really had a major sponsor. The last major sponsor, if I'm not mistaken, was your Ellerins, your Vodacom actually, under I forgot his name, the former chair. Yes, Mr. Jamzache, the former chair. I mean, that's a long time. 10 years without sponsorship. A sport that's actually a parastatal under government. We don't have a major sponsor. That's
unthinkable.
Yeah, that's unthinkable. I think me being part of PSA, people like us, all of us, somehow we're gonna have to put our head inside. What is it that we're doing wrong? Why are we not pulling sponsorship? Sponsors do not want to be associated with something that's muddy. So that means we need to clean ourselves as to whether in the boxing or whether is it administration, but clearly there's something that we're doing wrong and we're gonna need to get our acts together. So instead of me pointing fingers or others pointing fingers, let's say the 3 fingers are pointing back at us. What are we doing? So wherever I'm entrusted as a boxing administrator, let me make sure that I ace that job. And that's what I'm trying to get into. Like I said before, I'm human as well. There might be mistakes that I might be doing unawarely so. But one thing for sure, I will never negotiate a brown envelope. That I can say it in front of anyone. I will never do anything that's corruption. I know what it takes to be a boxer, and I will never be somebody that will take money to sell maybe a decision I don't do that. I've never done that. And I might be called many things, but one thing that I know for a fact is that when it comes to principles, I don't compromise. And so for us to get to that standard of actually pulling sponsors, each and everyone has a duty. And a duty is to make sure whatever you're entrusted with, you do it to the best of your ability without expecting to get a brown envelope. And that's one of the things that's killing boxing. But so far we are taking a right step, and I see there's a lot of corporate people that are now wants to be a part of the sport now that we've joined the universal in doing and permitting the celebrity boxing. So we are getting there. We are getting there. We have moved. We are once a number two in terms of the sport being liked in the country, and now we're sitting below top 10, I think. So we are slowly but surely, it seems like we are reclaiming our position.
Well, there you have it. Tough talk indeed from the provincial manager, Gauteng provincial manager, Mr. Lehlono Ramahule, and he's saying, look, we need to look at sponsors coming into the sport. You know, the sport lacks sponsorship, and it's a fact. You know, we can't implement our objectives if we don't have sponsors in the sport. And we actually do request and urge sponsors out there to come into the sport, support the sports. As he has said, alluded to the fact that you know, we need sponsorships. We've never had sponsors in boxing for the past 10 years. You know, that is very crucial, and this is what he's actually talking about, and looking at international standards and how we can compete internationally and have world champions and develop and nurture world champions. We thank you very much, Mr. Ramahule, and thank you for coming on SASS Kuyafiwa chat room show.
Thank you, Mr. Zivo, for having me here. It's always a pleasure being around you, sir.
Thank you very much. And, you know, we hope you've enjoyed this edition of SASS Kuyafiwa chat room. You know, it's a pleasure having you on the road with us, working and ensuring that we bring you boxing personalities, former champions, current champions, people who have the love of boxing at heart, to come and share with us the experiences that they've had on the journey, in their journey in the sport. And until next time, let's see you on the next show and the next edition on SASS Kuyafiwa chat room. Keep boxing.